More than half a century ago, during the space race era, the world witnessed ambitious attempts to explore the cosmos. In the early 1950s, the Soviet Union and the United States clashed in a competition for supremacy in space exploration programs. Sputnik 1, launched by the USSR in 1957, became the first artificial satellite of Earth, marking the beginning of a new era in space exploration. The next significant step was the mission Luna 1, which in 1959 became the first spacecraft to reach near-Earth space. This breakthrough opened the door to new horizons of exploration, including the lunar surface. However, one of the most mysterious stories of that time is associated with attempts to explore the red planet Mars in the 1960s. Researchers from the USSR and the USA made a series of ambitious attempts to send missions to Mars to study its atmosphere, climate, and surface. The first successful mission to Mars was carried out by American researchers using the Mariner probe in 1965. This probe became the first spacecraft to make a close flyby of Mars. It provided the first detailed photographs of the Martian landscape. However, the USSR also actively sought success in Mars exploration. Their missions, such as Mars 1, attempted to reach the red planet, but encountered a series of failures and difficulties. It was during this time that a mysterious disappearance of a spacecraft on Mars occurred, leaving the world in a state of uncertainty and stimulating further space exploration. After a series of unsuccessful attempts by the USSR to send missions to Mars in the early 1960s, they took a bold step to launch the Mars 1 mission. This probe, designed to study the atmosphere and surface of Mars, was intended to become the first Soviet spacecraft to reach the red planet. The launch of Mars 1 took place in 1962, and at first, everything seemed to be going according to plan. The probe traveled through Earth's orbit and headed towards Mars, collecting data along the way. However, after 4 months of travel and being at a distance of 106 million kilometers from Earth, the probe suddenly lost contact with the control center and disappeared from radar. All attempts to restore communication with Mars 1 were unsuccessful. This incident dealt a serious blow to the Soviet space program and sparked speculation about the reasons for the loss of contact with the spacecraft. However, despite the failure of Mars 1, the USSR was not going to give up on its aspirations to explore Mars. Soon after the loss of contact with Mars 1, Soviet scientists and engineers began preparing for the next stage, the missions of Mars 2 and Mars 3. These missions were intended not only to explore the atmosphere and surface of Mars, but also to achieve controlled landings on its surface. The launches of Mars 2 and Mars 3 took place in 1971, and this was a significant event both for science and politics. The USSR hoped to restore its reputation after the failure of Mars 1 and demonstrate its ability to carry out complex space missions. However, the launches of Mars 2 and Mars 3 were also accompanied by some difficulties. Even in the most advanced space programs, obstacles are inevitable, and Soviet scientists faced a number of technical and organizational problems in preparing for missions to Mars. Nevertheless, Soviet engineers and scientists were determined in their efforts to overcome difficulties and achieve success. Each stage of preparation and launch of the missions was carefully planned and carried out with maximum precision and professionalism. And finally, when the day of departure arrived, all the efforts and hard work of the Soviet researchers were justified. Mars 2 and Mars 3 lifted off into space to begin their journey to the red planet and to open new horizons for humanity. Since the launch of Mars 2 and Mars 3, a new chapter in the history of Mars exploration has begun. Every moment of the journey was tense and exciting for both scientists and the public who watched these missions from afar. The Mars 2 and Mars 3 probes carried the hopes and expectations of many people around the world. They were a symbol of scientific and technological progress, representing our quest to understand the universe and our planet in particular. Soviet scientists diligently worked to improve technologies and equipment to ensure the maximum accuracy and reliability of the missions. They knew that every detail, every instrument on board the probes played a crucial role in the success of the mission. And when Mars 2 and Mars 3 reached their destination and began their descent to the surface of Mars, the tension reached its peak. All eyes were on these small spacecraft as they faced the unexplored expanses of the red planet. Every moment of the descent was critical. Every decision was made with utmost caution and attention to detail. Scientists and engineers eagerly followed every step, preparing for the moment when the probes would touch the surface of Mars and begin their work. And when Mars 2 and Mars 3 finally landed on Mars, it was a moment of triumph and victory for Soviet science and technology. These missions opened new prospects for Mars exploration and helped expand our knowledge of the red planet. However, the path to success was long and not always smooth. Various difficulties and unforeseen circumstances arose during the missions, which had to be overcome. But thanks to the determination and perseverance of scientists and engineers, every problem was overcome, and the missions continued on their path to their goal. The next stages of the Mars 2 and Mars 3 missions will include detailed study of the atmosphere and surface of Mars, collection and analysis of soil and rock samples, and search for signs of life on the red planet. These missions represent an important step forward in the exploration of Mars and open up new possibilities for science and humanity. We can only speculate about what awaits us in the future, but one thing is clear: the exploration of Mars will continue, and with each new step, we will come closer to understanding this mysterious planet. After the successful landing of Mars 2 and Mars 3 on Mars, the world eagerly awaited new discoveries and scientific data that these missions would bring. However, as is often the case in space exploration, even the most carefully planned missions can encounter unexpected obstacles. Soviet scientists and engineers were prepared for the possibility that the Mars 2 and Mars 3 missions might face challenges after landing on Mars. However, no one could foresee all the challenges that awaited the researchers on the red planet. One of the main challenges encountered by the Mars 2 and Mars 3 missions was the unpredictable conditions on the surface of Mars. The red planet turned out to be much harsher and more unpredictable than scientists had anticipated. One of the most serious obstacles faced by the Mars 2 probe was the atmospheric conditions on Mars. The density and composition of Mars' atmosphere differ significantly from Earth's, creating additional difficulties for the operation of spacecraft. While the Mars 2 and Mars 3 probes were equipped with special sensors and instruments to study the atmosphere of Mars, the complexity and unpredictability of the conditions on the planet made data collection and scientific experiments challenging. Additionally, the Mars 2 and Mars 3 missions encountered technical problems and equipment failures. Despite all the careful testing and checks before launch, the spacecraft could be affected by various factors that could impact their functionality. Despite all the challenges and difficulties, the Mars 2 and Mars 3 missions left an unforgettable mark on the history of space exploration. These missions represented a significant step forward in the study of Mars and helped expand our knowledge of the red planet. Soviet scientists and engineers drew many lessons from the experience of the Mars 2 and Mars 3 missions, which will serve as the basis for future Mars exploration missions. Despite the challenges and setbacks, they did not give up and continue to work on new projects and missions that will help unlock the secrets of this enigmatic planet. The Mars 2 and Mars 3 missions were an important milestone in the history of Mars exploration and left an indelible mark on the scientific community and in the hearts of millions of people around the world. These missions showed that even in the face of difficulties and challenges, humanity is capable of overcoming obstacles and striving for new heights in understanding the universe. Despite all the difficulties and challenges, the Soviet missions Mars 2 and Mars 3 achieved some significant results and accomplishments that made important contributions to our understanding of Mars and space exploration in general. One of the key achievements of these missions was the first successful landing of a spacecraft on the surface of Mars. Although the Mars 2 mission ended in failure due to technical problems during landing, Mars 3 successfully landed on the planet and conducted a series of scientific experiments. The most significant result of the Mars 3 mission was that it became the first spacecraft to transmit an image from the surface of Mars to Earth. Although this image was blurry and not very clear due to the technological limitations of the time, it still represented a historic moment in the exploration of Mars. Additionally, the Mars 2 and Mars 3 missions collected and transmitted valuable data about the atmosphere and climate of Mars back to Earth. This data helps scientists better understand the environment on the red planet and expand our knowledge about it. Another important result of the Mars 2 and Mars 3 missions was that they stimulated interest in further exploration of Mars and space in general. These missions inspired a new generation of scientists and researchers and pushed them towards conducting even more ambitious projects in the future. Finally, the Mars 2 and Mars 3 missions left an unforgettable mark in the history of space exploration and in the hearts of millions of people around the world. These missions showed that humanity is capable of overcoming any obstacles and striving for new horizons in understanding the universe. The Soviet missions Mars 2 and Mars 3 left an important mark in the history of Mars exploration, but they merely opened the door to new possibilities and discoveries in the study of this enigmatic planet. Future missions to Mars promise even more exciting discoveries and revolutionary scientific results. One of the most anticipated events in the near future is the launch of NASA's Mars 2020 mission. This ambitious project involves landing a new rover on Mars, which will conduct further exploration of the planet's surface and collect soil samples for return to Earth. Mars 2020 will also search for traces of biological activity and pave the way for future human missions to Mars. Additionally, the European Space Agency ESA plans to launch its ExoMars mission, which also includes landing a rover on Mars. The main goal of ExoMars is to search for life on Mars and study its potential for future colonization. Other countries, such as China and India, are also actively working on their own Mars missions, demonstrating the growing interest of the global community in exploring this planet. The prospects of future missions to Mars inspire us to new discoveries and help expand our understanding of space and our place in the universe. The unexplored corners of Mars may hold the keys to understanding the origin of life in the universe and our own future in space. Thus, the Soviet missions Mars 2 and Mars 3 were just the first steps in humanity's journey to Mars. Future missions promise even more exciting discoveries and may possibly hold the key to solving some of the greatest mysteries of the universe. Studying space and journeying to other planets have always been a source of inspiration and wonder for me. Reflecting on the Soviet missions to Mars and their impact on our understanding of the universe fills me with admiration for the audacity and scientific spirit of the researchers of that time. Despite the difficulties and failures, Soviet scientists and engineers continued to strive for new heights in space exploration. Their efforts and perseverance opened new horizons before the world and inspired the next generations of explorers. Today, in the era of new technologies and international cooperation in the space sector, we stand on the threshold of new discoveries and achievements. Future missions to Mars promise to continue this path and may even pave the way for future human colonies on the Red Planet. Therefore, as I observe the development of space programs and missions to Mars, I feel like a part of this thrilling journey of humanity to the stars. And I am confident that the future of space exploration will be even more amazing and inspiring.